Hi guys, and welcome back to another DrAce video, and today we're going to be playing MotoGP 21, but more importantly, we will be discussing the 3 Grand Prix from Qatar from the Losail International Circuit and discussing the most important parts of those 3 Grand Prix. So from the beginning in Moto3 with Minho winning the absolute crazy race, 37,000 seconds ahead of fellow rival Sergio Garcia, Celestino Vietti dominating in the debut for the Mooney VR46 racing team, and of course, absolutely sensational stuff from the beast, La Bestia, Enea Bastianini in MotoGP. But first we need to discuss Moto3, and of course, as already mentioned, Andrea Minho winning the Grand Prix by just barely 37,000th of a second ahead of the fantastic Sergio Garcia. Now, of course, Sergio Garcia involved with a bit of controversy himself, getting involved with taking out Carlos Tatai in the middle of the Grand Prix. In fact, very early on, actually, as a matter of fact, and he also took his long lap penalty quite early on as well. Now, that is not the end of the long lap penalties, and that's certainly not the end of the penalties themselves. We've seen Ethan Guevara, Dennis Foggia, my favourite to win the Grand Prix and even the championship for the end of the season, and of course Tatsuki Suzuki as well, all taking long lap penalties and starting further down to the grid after messing around in qualifying. Now honestly, I'm glad, because it needs to stop this ridiculous weaving on the straights to try and stop your opponents from beating you. If they happen to position behind you and they beat you on the straight, then so be it. I'd rather see that than rather see someone getting taken out due to someone trying to be petty and stupid, trying to avoid them to beat them by weaving really ridiculously on the line. It's not something I want to see. We've seen it last year in America. It was not pretty. I do not want to see it once again. Now, of course, after the penalties were taken, we did start to see a little bit of an even field then, and things starting to separate quite a lot. Not the usual Moto3 race we're quite used to. And the biggest point with that is that Yumi Sasaki was absolutely ridiculous on board the Sterile Garda Max racing team Husqvarna. He flew to the front, avoided all the contact, avoided all the inside infighting, squabbling that goes on in Moto3, and just began to dominate the Grand Prix. It wasn't until about 15 laps in, maybe a little bit more, he had around a 3-second lead, and you were like, yeah, no one is catching him. Andrea Minho's speed on the Rivacol Honda was absolutely fantastic, but even he is not catching a Yumi Sasaki. And then, disaster struck. 3 seconds lead went down to 1.8, 1.4, 1 second. There you go, they've already passed him. What on earth happened to Yumi Sasaki? Now, unfortunately, the Japanese rider, who was absolutely perfect all the way through, did make one final mistake, which was the nail in the coffin for his Grand Prix, and unfortunately, as he made the mistake and the miraculous save, he did pop the belly pan of the bike open and the fairing was loose, thus resulting in a ridiculous time loss. So bad so that unfortunately Yumi Sasaki had to retire from the Grand Prix. Absolutely unravelled a perfect race for the Japanese rider, which was devastating to see, because he really deserved the Grand Prix victory here today. And it's a damn shame. Well, that is racing, and you got to be positive for Yumi Sasaki and Max Racing team, because they know they can compete at the highest level for the next Grand Prix, perhaps. But speaking of the Grand Prix, we did have a couple of crashes in this one. Tatsuki Suzuki and Lorenzo Felon having a bit of an accident. Yumi Sasaki retiring from the Grand Prix. Carlos Tatai getting a helping hand from Sergio Garcia in the early part of the race. Alberto Sura, unfortunately, I didn't see his crash, but on board the Rivacol Honda, he did crash out of the Grand Prix. Scott Ogden, right towards the end of the Grand Prix, a pretty decent result from him till that point. It was going to be a solid race for the British rider, but unfortunately, the young Brit did crash into the final corner, I do believe, towards the end of the Grand Prix. And unfortunately, Jama Masia, we've seen this too many times, ladies and gentlemen. Too many times from the young Spaniard. Crashing in the most important parts of the Grand Prix. Crashing when it really matters the most. He needs to fix it. He really does. And unfortunately, he hasn't fixed it yet. But before we move on to Moto2, because we are a little bit pressed for time, just want to discuss a few people who I thought was fantastic throughout the race, such as Ethan Guevara's comeback after being so far down after the penalty from the qualifying, same as Dennis Foggia. Did expect to see both of them even still fighting their way through to actually fight for the victory, but unfortunately for them, we didn't quite see it. Diogo Moreira, the young Brazilian, was rapid. Absolutely rapid on the MT Helmet's MSI bike. He was unbelievable. He's picked up that KTM extremely well and was certainly considered for the podium a couple of times throughout the race, so shout out to the young Brazilian. And a few other riders battling for a point in this Grand Prix, Joel Kelso and Daniel Holgado giving it everything they had for a possible spot in that 15th position, and of course the return of Ana Carrasco battling with them as well, but unfortunately she did finish 43 seconds off the Grand Prix leader, which of course was Andrea Migno. So we now move across to Moto2, where we discuss the dominant performance from Celestino Vietti and a few other little parts of the Grand Prix as well. But the first thing I'm going to mention is I thought Pedro Acosta was going to win the Grand Prix. From FP1, I was told that Pedro Acosta was the favourite. Pedro Acosta is ridiculous on that KTM. Pedro Acosta, Pedro Acosta, Pedro Acosta. And honestly, I'm surprised that he didn't do better than that, but honestly, I'm kind of relieved because the tension that Pedro Acosta is getting right now is quite silly. They are really ramping up the pressure on this young man. Yes, he is an alien, there's no doubt about it. But give the lad a chance for at least to a Grand Prix before you start putting all this pressure on him. Goodness me. It's all I've heard from the commentators, through the pundits on Twitter and social media. Goodness me, just let him race. It was a humbling experience for Pedro Acosta, I think, race 1. I think simply because, of course, going into the first corner with his usual aggressive style that he did in Moto3, getting pushed out wide, then getting a bit carved up with a couple of riders from the back, and then realising, uh-oh, this is not as easy as I think it's going to be. And I think this is where he's going to have a bit of a humbling experience for a couple of Grand Prix, and then he's going to come back and probably start taking some podiums and a couple of Grand Prix victories. But I have to mention it because it was getting a little bit annoying listening to Pedro Acosta on every single time Moto2 was on. And it's not fair because the level of talent in Moto2 right now is massive. There's some great riders in there, and I think people are overlooking it. And I don't think it does them any service whatsoever. It's very unfair in my opinion, because it seems that Pedro Acosta's just stolen all of the limelight from Moto2, which I do understand, because he is one heck of a talent and he was very fast in practice and he was very fast in the testing sessions. But I don't think they're giving a fair chance to the other riders. Some people are already calling it as a champion. He's going to move up to MotoGP next season. I just think too far, way too soon. Let the lad compete. Let's see what happens in Moto2, and let's also discuss the rest of the Grand Prix rant over about Pedro Acosta. Don't get me wrong, he's an amazing rider, but we have to discuss the rest of it in Moto2. So from the top to the bottom, the amazing dominance from Celestino Vietti. He didn't do a thing wrong. Getting the whole shot, disappearing to the front, managing the gap after lap after lap after lap. Aaron Canet was the only man close enough to try and give him some pressure, and he didn't even buckle from Aaron Canet. Aaron Canet now is quite not a veteran, but he has got a bit more experience in Moto2 than Celestino Vietti. But for me, Celestino Vietti was fantastic. It was coming. We knew this Grand Prix victory was going to come sooner or later. I'm surprised it's come so soon, but I'm happy for it. He's one hell of a rider. Made his debut in Moto3 in Phillip Island and gone on the podium on his first debut. So debuting the Mooney VR46 team and taking a victory isn't really that surprising when you think about it. He's one hell of a talent, so I'm impressed by Celestino Vietti, but all eyes were not on the young Italian. Unfortunately for him, all attention was being paid to the final position on the rostrum, which seen riders from Tony Arbolino to Augusto Fernandez to Iagora, Sam Lowes and even Jorge Navarro for a little point as well. The battle for that third position was excellent. It really kept us on the edge of our seat, and right towards the final corner it was not decided. Sam Lowes unfortunately fell off a bit by the wayside. Tony Arbolino fell really behind and couldn't really get his rhythm once again. Sam Lowes battling the injury. Maybe he's not going to get on the podium. Maybe it's going to be down to Augusto Fernandez and Iagora, which it was until the final corner when Iagora slipped onto the floor, crashed out, but maybe not. He takes into Augusto Fernandez, clatters into the side of the Spaniard, and somehow both riders stay on board. Augusto Fernandez lost his podium, but saved Iagora from crashing, and I hope he sees the funny side to that, but I don't think he would have done, because Sam Lowes, his former teammate of course, blasted past him on the Elfmark VDS Racing Team Kalex, and takes the final position on the rostrum. If you didn't get a chance to see it, it was definitely worth watching. It was really surprising. I certainly had me out of my seat, so I'm very impressed with that one and very pleased to see Sam Lowes get a bit of fortune for once. This man is plagued with bad luck, so it's great to see he finally has a bit of a chance to actually take some good things and make it so. So good job to Sam Lowes. A few other mentions as well. I've got to mention Barry Baltus's ridiculous save. Hand on the floor, pushing up off the tarmac, keeps himself on board the motorcycle. If you haven't seen the Barry Baltus save, watch it. Now, Barry Baltus went from my Moto2 seasons for being the man at the back of the grid to saving it in real life. The video game did him no favours, but in real life he did himself some massive favour by saving that crash. So before we move on to the big boys in MotoGP, just want to give a few more shout-outs to a couple of riders in Moto2, from the likes of Marcel Schrotter and Cameron Beaubier finishing in the points. Marcel Schrotter very injured at the minute with that damaged hand, which still somehow Robocop managed to finish in the points in top 10. Amazing job for the German. Jake Dixon not having the best of races, having to be pushed wide at the beginning as well, similar to what happened to Pedro Acosta. Still fought back for 11th spot. Cameron Beaubier in the points, so good to see for the American fans. I do believe Cameron Beaubier's got a bright future in Moto2, and this could be the year we could see some podiums. He's certainly getting up to speed with the Calyx, so I'm very curious to see how he gets on. And of course his American racing compatriot and teammate Sean Dillon Kelly coming across from Moto America here in Moto2. Different results for him, but of course starting and learning is going to be the biggest thing for him. He's got to learn, got to adapt to Moto2, and I think he'll have a bright future as well. Sad to see that a couple of rookies didn't quite have the impact that I thought they would, from Zonta van der Goorberg, Nicolo Antonelli, Kenneth Kubo, Manuel Gonzalez and Gabi Rodrigo as well, because of course some of the rookies, Philip Salach and Jeremy Alcoba, have been pretty promising so far here in Moto2, so we will see what happens. But finally, just to round it up with a couple of crashes, unfortunately as mentioned, Philip Salach, he had a great start, was really good, qualified 4th position, unfortunately did crash out early on in the Grand Prix. Barry Baltus, unfortunately after that amazing save, crashed out as well. And of course Lorenzo Dalla Porta, Dave Kahn, if you're a Depeche Mode fan, looks very similar, unfortunately he crashed out as well. But now we go on to MotoGP, we take a look at the beasts, and not just the beasts, but the beast, Enea Bastianini. What a performance from the young Italian on that absolutely stunning Ducati. I really love the look of that Ducati, the Ducati being the next, the Grassini Racing project. Fausto Grassini right now will be chuffed to bits, and God bless him and his wife. What a Grand Prix, what a feel-good story to start MotoGP. I know for one I am absolutely buzzing because MotoGP is back, but you cannot beat a start like this. A team that have just started, of course, not just started, but have a fresh start, if you will, with the new livery, the new look and the new team, with Enea Bastianini and Fabio Di Gianantonio taking victory in the first Grand Prix in Qatar, dedicating it to Fausto Grassini, who sadly lost his life just last year. But it wasn't all about the beast, it wasn't all about Enea Bastianini. We almost had a different winner, which to me looked like it was going to be for a long time, and that was of course Pol Espargaro on board the Repsol Honda. That bike is working so well for Pol Espargaro, and it's great to see. Pol Espargaro is a very, very solid talent in MotoGP, and seeing him up there in the sharp end is where he should be. So that was great to see, and honestly, I really expected him to take the victory, and it wasn't to be. Soft tyres were a bit of a gamble here in Qatar, and it didn't pay dividends for Pol, as he did start to slide down the order ever so slightly. Not enough to fall out of the podium, he still got onto the podium position, but Brad Binder was there to pick up the pieces for when it started to go a little bit sideways for the Repsol Honda rider. And then of course, Brad Binder not only gave chase to Enea Bastianini, he pushed him to the final part of the Grand Prix, down towards the line. It was very, very close, and honestly, another lap, we wouldn't have been seeing a dream start for Enea Bastianini. 3.5 tenths of a second separated Brad Binder from the victory, and I tell you what, the Red Bull KTM Factory Racing team don't do very well here in Qatar. That seems to be a thing of the past. Brad Binder, he was there and he was ready to take on the challenge of Qatar, and he did fantastic. The only KTM in the top 10. The only KTM in the top 14. As Remy Gardner did finish 15th, so I can't say the top 15, but still, wow, Brad Binder. What a race. What a brilliant performance from the young South African. We know Brad Binder's good, it's no secret. But if he can do well on the tracks that the KTM doesn't do too good at, well, you could be looking at a KTM World Champion. Might be early to say, but you never know. Now, one thing I will say about MotoGP is it's very unpredictable, and the Qatar Grand Prix was exactly that. I don't bet on any riders, and I try not to pick any riders after last year's disaster when I picked Alex Rins to win the World Championship. Yes, we can all laugh about that now because that was just a horrendous decision of mine to choose that. But I have faith in Alex Rins once again. He will be up there in the sharp end, which he was. But I need to get back to the point I'm trying to make, and that is the unpredictability of MotoGP. One of the main reasons is why we love it. 26 riders on the grid, I would say at least 18 of them have a chance of winning a Grand Prix. Maybe that's a bit high, but you never know with the circumstances in MotoGP. And I can tell you now, not many people chose Enea Bastianini, Brad Binder and Pol Espargaro to be on the podium in this Grand Prix. If you had that pick, I can't believe it. Your luck is incredible, or you know a lot more about things than I do, which is probably true as well. But honestly, not the three I expected. I expected Pecco. Jorge Martin was, for me, a given to win the Grand Prix before it even started. I expected him to get the whole shot and disappear into the distance. Didn't happen. Marquez I expected to be up there, and I expected him to give it everything during the Grand Prix. He's not fully confident with that Honda yet. He doesn't really like it compared to the other ones, but he does have a lot of faith in it. Pol Espargaro, I did not see coming. I did not see Brad Binder coming, and I certainly didn't see Bastianini taking the Grand Prix victory. It was a very surprising Grand Prix, and the surprises don't end there. Pecco Bagnaia taking out Jorge Martin into turn 1. Well, that you could have wrote that down and had evidence of it, and I still wouldn't have believed you that you said that was going to happen. I certainly didn't see that happening. I didn't see Jack Miller having electronic issues, and just a disaster for Ducati in general. There's only one Ducati who did well, and that was, of course, Enea Bastianini. Every other Ducati was not great. Johan Zarco always goes well in Qatar, down in 8th position by the time the end of the Grand Prix. Apart from Enea Bastianini, it was a Ducati disaster. The Lenovo team, a Ducati detritus. Terrible. Really bad, and it was so surprising. I honestly expected Joan Mir and Alex Rins to be fighting up there as well, because of course their race pace that they had from the practice sessions, their one-lap pace was good as well. But it didn't happen in the Grand Prix. And it surprised me. Joan Mir was carving through them like knife through butter to start the Grand Prix. I really expected Joan Mir to finish on the podiums. What I called at the beginning of the Grand Prix, I would say he was in 2nd or 3rd, no doubt. Victory possibly not, because I expected Jorge Martin to be doing that. And very surprising. The best part about MotoGP is the unpredictability. I'll say it once, I'll say it again. It's brilliant. I love that part of MotoGP. And of course the surprise is what makes it interesting, but it also keeps us on the edge of our toes because you never know what's going to happen. Now the battle of the rookies were down into 15th place, all battling for them final point positions, and only one of the rookies got a point, and that of course being Remy Gardner, the Moto2 World Champion. I do believe he's got a damaged wrist right now, yet he still finished in 15th spot, just ahead of the South African Darren Binder, which, I tell you what, he could surprise a lot of people this season, and I hope he does. There's a lot of people ridiculing Darren Binder and saying that he doesn't deserve a MotoGP seat. Now, I will be devil's advocate. I don't think anyone deserves a MotoGP seat. A MotoGP seat is earned. It's not given. Has he earned a MotoGP spot? In my opinion, I would say no. I think he should have gone up to Moto2, done a few years in there, tried to win a couple more Grand Prix, get his name out there a little bit more, and then possibly offered a seat in MotoGP. Do I think it's a wrong decision and they shouldn't have had him? No, I think if that's the decision they made and Darren Binder deserves a chance just as much as anyone else say they deserve it. But I think, why not? Give the lad a chance, and that's what I'm doing this season. Darren Binder is very, very ridiculed in the Grand Prix sport, as we've just mentioned a moment ago, and it's his time now to show them what he can do. To bounce back, give the middle finger to the haters, and get himself in the points position. I'll tell you what, if he beat Remy Gardner and got that point, the haters would have been a little bit more quiet, wouldn't they? But let's move now on to a couple of more riders. We mentioned the disappointments in this one. Alex Marquez crashing out, Bagnaia taking out Jorge Martin, Oliveira. Oh, Oliveira. I don't know what's going on with the Portuguese man, but he needs to step up and sort out these problems. I like Miguel Oliveira, I really do, and I want to see him up there in the sharp end because he's a fantastic talent, and we need to see him up there. And I don't know what it is, but he is really struggling with the KTM right now. It's not a good look for him when he's crashing out and Brad Binder's taking the podium in a very difficult circuit. We need it. I want it. I would like to see Miguel Oliveira back. So wish the best for Miguel Oliveira. Hopefully he can get back up to speed and get back on track where he was in the middle part of last season before the disasters happened. Jack Miller had an electronic issue, so did not finish the Grand Prix and was absolutely furious as he exited the Grand Prix and retired from it. Pretty much immediately he started having the issues, which just poor luck. Unfortunately, there's not a lot they can do about that. And unfortunately for me, one of my most favourite riders, Marco Bezzecchi from the Mooney VR46 Racing Team's debut, crashes out as well. Now Bezzecchi was in the points, and Bezzecchi was looking like to be the top rookie in today's Grand Prix, but unfortunately didn't quite happen, and Bez threw the brand new Ducati down the road. But there's a lot of stuff to discuss, and I don't think I have enough time to continue to discuss, but I really wish I did, because I think there's so much more. So I guess I'll ask you guys to nip into the comment section down below and just to talk about whatever you want to talk about regarding the Grand Prix of Qatar. Let me know your favourite part, let me know your least favourite part, let me know about the surprises you thought, and even your picks for the Grand Prix victory and the podiums that you had throughout the 3 Grand Prix. But for me, I really enjoyed it. It's great to have MotoGP back. Disappointed for the Yamahas. I am a Yamaha fan. I do have a bit of affiliation with them. So I have the affinity with that team, and I would really love to see them battling it up there, but what a disappointment for them. Quartararo down in 9th, getting pipped on the line from Johan Zarco. Frankie Morbidelli, one of my favourite riders as well, down in 11th place. Not really doing anything too special. Maverick Vinales, I expected more from Mac, I really did. He looked good in testing and he looked good in the practice until middle way through, and I thought, hang on, this is not going to happen. So I expected more from Maverick, but we'll see. Expected more from Dovi, but again, we'll see. The pace was extremely fast up at the sharp end of the Qatar Grand Prix, so give them benefit of the doubt, I guess. But honestly, it's great to have MotoGP back. It's great to be doing these videos for you, and I cannot wait for the next Grand Prix in the Mandalika circuit. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I think it's going to be pretty wild. It's going to be a new track for MotoGP. Of course, we've seen it in World Superbike, and the race was fantastic. It was really, really good. So let's see what happens in the future. Now, of course, as well, I do aim to do the World Superbike race recaps when the video game comes out. I do believe it's going to be sometime out in July, maybe later. I have no idea when. I know there's a rumour surrounding it and all, and hopefully we get to cover that very soon. But massive wheelie across the line for the Beast. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope I covered everything you wanted me to cover. If I didn't, let me know in the comment section down below, and we can have a chat about it in there. But guys, it's been a pleasure to discuss MotoGP with you. But upon that note, I need to make some more videos. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao for now. Oh hi, didn't quite see you there. Good to see you're still here. If this video didn't quite set your appetite, then why not watch some more DrAce content by clicking the video shown on screen now. Furthermore, if you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so now with the links down in the description. Consider subscribing so you don't miss a single DrAce video.